Welcome to episode 2. I am Daisy, and this video is going to be about 4 beliefs I had as a teen low-carb dieter and how it led me to this path of binge eating and healing binge eating disorder along with complex PTSD. So I've been going through the Glow Approach book. I talked about it in episode 1, and I think I was on chapter 3 or 4 with that last video. I completed the book, however, I read through chapter 7, Sustainable Maintenance, but I didn't do any of the work they wanted me to do because mentally, I didn't feel ready. I don't believe I'm at a place of sustainable maintenance, so I restarted the book. And yesterday, I already completed chapter 1, and instead of it taking me a couple days, it actually only took me 1 to get through chapter 1. And I managed to actually fill in some blank spots because I feel like I have a better understanding of myself and where some of this emotional eating comes from. My first goal was just to be able to see where in my life emotional eating has taken control, and now I'm working on identifying the triggers and slowly replacing emotional eating with other things, with other coping mechanisms, because emotional eating for me has been a coping mechanism. By the time I got to chapter 6, I had this eureka moment, and it's oh, that would be a great video to do. So here it is. I didn't realize that the diet mentality has consumed so much of my life, more than half my life. Well, maybe just about half. Because I became a low-carb dieter at 16, and it happened really quickly. So, and that's since that's the only thing I've really known. And I didn't realize that this diet mentality has been kind of ruling my life and the way I view food. So I realized that specifically these 4 beliefs came from being raised by my dad. And I guess I'll go into a little story about how the diet began after I say the 4 beliefs. And then I hope when you listen to how this diet began, maybe you can identify where these beliefs came from. The first one and the biggest one is, okay, I'll eat all the carbs in the house and then never eat it again. Carbs are bad. No one should eat carbs. They're totally useless. And food is shameful. I am bad, I eat bad. Or I ate bad, so I am bad. Another really common phrase is, you are what you eat. And those were the 4 beliefs that I grew up with. And I didn't know that necessarily they were wrong. Is story time about how this diet came into our lives. And it was the last week of 10th grade. I got expelled for having a knife on me. My friend stole shoes from someone else. She asked me to put them into my PE locker because she already shut and locked her locker and we were late for our next class. And so I took her, what I thought was her shoes. Turns out she ended up stealing them from someone else. And when the security at the school searched both my lockers and my person, they found cigarettes and a knife. Now, I had an incident that happened, a traumatic thing that happened earlier in the school year, and it caused me to want to keep a knife on me at all times, and they found that particular knife. So not only did I get expelled from school, but I was also in trouble with the state of Illinois. And since I wasn't returning back to school for my junior year, I was able to start working through a program that allows underage kids to begin working, and that was me. So I began working the summer of my junior year, going into my junior year, and all junior year itself. And they had a box of free books by the door of the library that I worked at, and I brought home a book that I remember my dad talking about the Atkins diet. And I brought home him the book, and he read it cover to cover. I've never seen him read a book like that since, that fast. And it was a diet he immediately was beginning to implement. And after he did the diet and had success, my brother followed suit. And my dad would make some type of weird comment about, oh, well, you really don't need to do it, but you should. And so then that prompted me to start the diet also. And I lost a ton of weight really quick. But this is about the point in time when shame started coming into the picture regarding food. Because even though we were eating ice cream and deep fried everything and loads of junk food multiple times a day, all the time, and we gained, all three of us, my brother, my dad, and I, all gained a tremendous amount of weight once my mom left the home. And, but it wasn't until beginning the Atkins diet that shame had a place within this. We were comfort food eating because of the problems and abuse my mom left behind and things I didn't see at this point in time, but it was just comforting to eat this way with my dad and brother. Whereas the home, like, even though he was strict and controlling, it was coming from a different place than I thought originally. Anyway, but because of working at the library, I was working really closely with the librarians, and my brother and I actually helped create anime and gaming events for the library. And so with these anime and gaming events came food, snacks, and stuff. And me and a team of other kids our age, like, helped plan all this. And so every time these gaming events were happening, my brother and I were, like, chronically binging carbohydrate foods. And this is where, like, we began associating parties and friends and gaming with food. And not only that, we were trying to keep it a secret from my dad. But for somehow he always just knew when we ate junk, and he would just berate us for half an hour to an hour about how the carbs are bad, you shouldn't be eating this, you're not supposed to do this isn't a diet you can't keep going on and off of. And he would just, so then there would be this period of restriction. When these events were not happening, we would restrict, and then all of a sudden when the events came back again, we would binge. So this cycle kept happening, and it almost became comfortable. And at a certain point, when, especially when I began college, I started purging on top of that. Because I developed this fear of gaining weight and not having approval and stuff from my dad. So now we're moving on from, like, high school to college, and my relationship changed with food after leaving my dad. And sugar helped soothe me when I was with a toxic partner. My older son's father, who is a diagnosed narcissist. And I would eat to stifle and stuff emotions because of how I couldn't vocalize how I knew things were wrong, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And I thought, well, maybe this is just how life is. You know, I learned now that my mom is most definitely toxic. More than likely, she's a covert narcissist, and this just went under my radar for so long. So once I left my older son's dad, when I was a single mom on my own, I coped with stress with eating sugar, and there's a lot of unresolved trauma and survival mode. So I just didn't realize that this pattern that began in my junior year of high school, it just has kept continuing since then. So I hope this kind of explains the history of how becoming a teenage low-carb dieter kind of shaped how I developed these unhealthy patterns. And I can see why, where they don't recommend people with issues to fast and diet at such a young age, because now I can see it. It really confuses the way you respond to things. And that was a little bit about history that led up to binge eating, especially with those periods where, you know, I have really good meals, but then just sit down and just go ham on ice cream and chocolate and pizza and stuff like that. And those are the three biggest things: ice cream, chocolate, and pizza. Those are definitely trigger foods. And I'm learning more about what trigger foods are and how they work and whether or not to have them in the house. I mean, if chocolate's around, I will snack on it. But now I've noticed a significant change, that a chocolate bar lasts me 2 days, like an extra large special dark chocolate bar from Dollar General. And that will actually last me 2 days instead of one sitting. When I was at my worst last July with my herniated disc, injured MCL, and degenerative spinal stenosis, I'd eat 2 or 3 of those extra large chocolate bars a day. Because they were at $3 for $6 at 3 for $6 or 3 for $5. I can't remember. Inflation. But I get 3 of those daily. Or a thing of ice cream with chocolate. So I'd have the chocolate, and if I ran out of the chocolate bars, I'd have the ice cream available. And that happened all last year, because from February until August, I graduated from physical therapy, and I was still limping, but I was better. But yeah, that whole time, like, I spent the majority of the year last year injured. So that's when I really realized how bad that this binging got. But yeah, so back to those 4 beliefs. All 4 of these beliefs were reinforced by my dad, and I carried this with me for years, and I didn't even realize it. The biggest one, like I said earlier, is being, I'm going to eat all the carbs in the house and then never eat it again. That's the all or nothing thinking that is possessive to a diet mentality, and it easily leads to binging, because you're forcing yourself to eat all of the bad foods. All of the bad foods. And, so that they're all gone. Carbs are bad. This aligns good foods to bad foods. A salad is good. Carbs are bad. That was probably the most reoccurring phrase that I've heard. No one should eat carbs, they're totally useless. And this taught me to have to keep doing this. Keep talking to people about somebody's leaving their house across the street. Yeah, so, like, no one should eat carbs. There's many times where I'd have conversation with people and they would tell me about a diet, and I'd promote a low-carb diet, and it did help some people, and I hope that I didn't leave these people with health problems because of the people that I did coach. Not coaching on, like, professional scale, more like, hey, you lost a ton of weight after the baby, what'd you do? And I tell them, and then they would come back to me and be like, hey, I did the thing, and it helped, I like this diet or whatever. So I hope that I didn't leave them with these issues that I grew up with. But again, like, the low-carb diet was something that was, like, a mainstay in my life. So, yeah, because it's structured, and, yeah. I lost my train of thought. I actually had an argument with my weightlifting coach in high school when I went back for my senior year, because I was expelled all my junior year. So for my senior year, I was actually there, and I was like a totally different person. I was more hippie. That was the year I had my first set of dreadlocks, and yeah. So I was very avoidant. I didn't really socialize, and people that I did hang out with my sophomore year. So I had to replace a PE class, and instead of taking 2 of the same PE class, I took weightlifting instead. And the weightlifting coach was also the football coach, and we had a particular day. I don't know if we did this regularly or not, but this one particular day sticks out. And we were in the library, and he was coaching us on nutrition. And I openly argued with him about carbs, like, in front of the entire class. And I was one of those kids who couldn't even stand up in the front and give a speech. The only speech I've ever been able to do was about Pink Floyd. And that's because I knew Pink Floyd like the back of my hand. So it was the only one I could do without even researching. So, I openly argued with him about carbs, and I probably seemed either confident or cocky, probably a bit of both, but I was wrong then about carbs, because he was talking about this in general spectrum of athletics, kids that were athletes. I was probably the only one in that class that was not an athlete. Not at all. But that's how confident in the information I've been given, and it's not like I'm wrong in my information about carbs and whether or not they're useless, because for someone like me, right now, carbs are useless. Like, but in the grand scheme of things, healthy teenage athletic boys will utilize carbs way differently than a goth chick who sits and listens to metal music and plays video games and consuming ludicrous amounts of Mountain Dew and Doritos. Like, this is totally 2 different spectrums. So for the goth gamer, totally useless. But for the athletic teenage boy that's quite healthy, he would utilize those carbs in a totally different manner. So he was right and I was right, but I was also wrong because the situation regarding carbs was totally different. But that's how much it was drilled into my head about low carb. The 4th thing, food is shameful. I heard this phrase constantly, you are what you eat. And normally regarding nuts, saying that I am nuts. But it was just some kind of a joke my dad did. But even then, like, aside from the joke, the whole spectrum of low carb dieting, and you are what you eat. If you are eating low carb, you will lose weight and be healthier. And that's not, I'm not saying that low carb and other forms of low carb like keto and carnivore, I'm not saying that they are the be all end all in the diet world. It just depends on if you're a healthy teenage boy who doesn't need to lose weight. You're going to utilize carbs more efficiently than a mom who stays at home. Hi. So food is shameful. And every time we ate carbs and came home, we get berated from my dad for at least a half hour, 45 minutes. Him reciting things from the book, things he can quote and point down in the page. It was like the Bible thumper of diets. And that's what was going on. So this created this shame and regret regarding eating. So these are 4 beliefs that I grew up with as a teenage low-carb dieter, and where it falls in line with the path I am on to healing binge eating disorder and complex PTSD, because it's like getting rid of these layers of shame that help me reveal who I am. And I can't say who I was before the trauma, because the first 24 years of my life were trauma. So it's like, who am I without the trauma? And that's kind of the part that I'm getting to. And I'm glad that this book, The Glow Approach by Lynn Schroyer, which ironically enough, she's kind of sort of near me in South Dakota. I didn't realize that when I ordered this off Amazon and my therapist recommended it. I don't even know if my therapist knows that she's from this area. But thank you for watching episode 2, and I hope you stick with me in my weight loss journey, and I can't wait to see where I will be in episode 3.